How do we develop IMers? Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. And today we're going to talk about different strategies for training the different strokes in an IM and helping swimmers learn to build a better IM and what are the ways we can go about doing that. So I've received several questions about IM training, and the most recent one was, do you just train the strokes separately, or do you integrate and incorporate IM training? And in terms of actually swimming IMs during practice, what's the best way to go about doing that? So for me, this isn't a physiological problem, it's a skill problem. If it was just a physiological problem, we could just do whatever training was necessary to be good for a 200 or a 400 and just leave it at that. The strokes we swam and how we swam them wouldn't matter. But obviously they do, because swimmers have to be good at the strokes and they have to be able to do them in the context of an IM. So when thinking about IM training, here are the basic principles that I always come back to. The first one is, the better they are at the individual strokes, the more potential they have to swim a fast IM. If someone's the world record holder in the 100 freestyle, the 100 backstroke, the 100 breaststroke, and the 100 butterfly, odds are their IM is going to be pretty good than someone that's 10 seconds off the world record in each of those strokes. At the same time, that means they have the potential to be a really good IMer. That doesn't mean they will be a really good IMer. When it comes down to it, the 100 freestyle at the end of a 400 IM is not the same 100 freestyle that comes at the end of a 400 freestyle. Swimmers need to have great strokes, and they need to be able to execute those strokes in the context of an IM. It's two separate skills, and we need to develop both of them. So what's the problem? The challenge is that training IM specifically is really good at helping swimmers learn to use their strokes within the context of an IM. They get used to swimming backstroke after butterfly, breaststroke after backstroke, and freestyle after breaststroke. They learn what they have to do to be successful in that context. However, if swimmers only perform IM training or only perform certain strokes within the context of IM training, they may never sufficiently develop those strokes to realize their goals. On the other hand, training the strokes in isolation really helps swimmers learn to improve those specific strokes. It improves their potential. But training those strokes in isolation doesn't necessarily help swimmers learn how to execute those strokes in the context of an IM. The strength of one approach is the weakness of the other, and vice versa. And so as a result, we need to do both. The question is, what does it look like and when does it need to happen? We have to make choices because there's only so much time and so much energy in a season, in a week, in a workout. So we need a framework from which we can make decisions. And so I'm going to go through some different strategies, some different ideas about how to approach this problem at different points in someone's career, at different points in a season, and also in the context of workouts. Let's start off with swimmers' age and how that affects what they should be doing over time. And as swimmers move from the introductory stages of the sport and they transition to the senior level, there should be a shift and a change in the relative emphasis of IM training and stroke training. How much you choose to emphasize one over the other at any given point and how much you choose to shift that emphasis is ultimately going to be up to you and the swimmers that you work with. However, there are some basic guidelines that should apply to everyone regardless of the situation. I'm going to break it down to young swimmers, swimmers that have progressed through much of their age group experience, and senior elite swimmers. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of people that are in between those stages, but those are good guide points and landmarks that you can use to help make decisions for the athletes that you are working with. We'll start off with young swimmers. They're not good at their strokes, and they need to spend a lot of time improving those strokes. For them to improve their IM, they have to get a lot better at the strokes, and they're going to do so much more quickly and much more effectively if we isolate those strokes and work on them outside of the context of an IM. Of course, they can do some IM training where they're swimming all the strokes, but the focus should be on building the strokes over time. Then, as swimmers move into the middle of the age group progression and they start to have more experience, their skills get better, their strokes get better, they can start doing more and more IM training because they're at the point where they need to learn to use the skills that they've developed while swimming in IM. They still need to improve their specific skills, but they can spend more time working on IM work where they're transitioning between the different strokes. Then at the final stage of the progression, when it comes to elite athletes, they've usually gotten quite good at transitioning from the strokes because they've had a lot of practice doing so. However, they often have one or two strokes that really need to make progress in order for them to continue to improve and continue to take the next step. And because they've done so much work and they've been working for so long, they really need concentrated focus and concentrated effort to improve one or two of those strokes. So for these athletes, they actually might need to shift back and focus more on developing the strokes because they're already pretty good at integrating it into the IM. They just need to take their strokes to the next level. Sometimes you even find swimmers that choose to focus on 1 or 2 strokes for 3 months or so and really make a big change. And sometimes it's even on a specific aspect of that stroke. So maybe it's their breaststroke kick that they're really trying to turn around, and they'll actually spend a lot of concentrated time trying to improve that. This can be done in isolation, or it can be done as part of some biased IM work where maybe it's some IM training, but 2/3 of the IM set or half of the IM set is focused on that targeted stroke. They're still doing IM training, but they're really focusing on bringing up 1 or 2 strokes so that they can improve their overall IM. Especially early in the season, the focus is going to be on the strokes rather than the IM. So we can see over the course of a training career, they start off needing to learn the strokes, then they need to learn how to use them, and then again, they need to fine-tune specific strokes that need to improve in order for swimmers to take the next leap in performance. The next consideration point is, how do things change within a season? My basic framework is, earlier in the year, work more on the strokes, build a better base of skill so that they have more potential in the IM, and then as you go through the year, you start doing more and more and more IM training. The reason for that is the strokes are the base, and the better they are, the more potential there is for swimmers to swim fast. But of course, they need to learn how to use these strokes in an IM, so as they move through the season, they're getting more specific in that they're working on these strokes in the context of an IM, and that's ultimately what they're going to have to do in a race. So that's what they need to focus on as we get closer to racing. How much you choose to emphasize one versus the other, and when you start making that shift is really ultimately up to you, the age of your athletes, the skill level of your athletes, and the needs that they have at this current time. As we just talked about, that shift might happen later with younger athletes and elite athletes because they're spending more time on the stroke, and athletes in the middle, they may be progressing into IM training a little bit earlier because that's the focus of their training at this point. So in general, more stroke work early, more IM work later. And of course, you can and should do both at the same time. It's the relative emphasis that shifts over the course of a season. Finally, workouts. So what are some options in terms of how to train an IM while you're actually doing IM work? So the first option is just to simply do straight up IMs. So something like 10-200 IMs. And the goal is to just do it over and over again and let swimmers practice. It's simple, it's straightforward, and it gives them a lot of opportunities to work on what they're going to experience in a race. The second option is to spend a lot of time switching back and forth between the different strokes, so practice the transition from stroke 1 to stroke 2 and do so at pretty good speeds and a little bit of fatigue. So for instance, maybe it's 15 100s as number 1 is 50 fly, 50 back, number 2 is 50 back, 50 breast, number 3 is 50 breast, 50 free, and they just repeat that 5 times. And so they're getting a lot of practice of learning how to switch from one to the other. Option 3, you can do IM work, but choose to focus on one of those strokes. So maybe they're doing 10 150s, it's 25 fly, 75 back, 25 breast, 25 free. So that way they get more work with backstroke, and you can choose to develop those skills in that way, but also do it in the context of an IM. Of course, those sets are just super simple examples, and you can do all sorts of different things using those principles. One isn't necessarily better than the other. It's more about what do you need to work on, what do the swimmers need to work on, and how is it going to help them get better. The key is to decide what they need to do. Do they need more straight IM work? Do that. Do they need more practice switching between strokes at speed and when tired? Do that. Do they need more emphasis on one given stroke within the context of an IM? Do that. Do they just need specific stroke work and not in the context of an IM? Do that instead. So to bring a big picture, remember that swimming the IM is a skill. They need great strokes, and they need to be able to execute those in sequence. They have to be able to do both, and they have to train to be able to do both. These are some simple guidelines to get you started. Just pay attention to what your swimmers need, how they respond, and you'll be set. Hope that was helpful, and as always, keep it simple.